This video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Stay tuned to find out how you can get Surfshark for 85% off and get 3 extra months for free.
Well, the summer of 1998 was a very formative time for me as a wrestling fan. I only started watching wrestling maybe 1 or 2 months before this season, and I was kind of wrapped up in everything, both WWF and WCW. And this next pay-per-view in particular, I was very wrapped up in the hype for this. So what would happen when I eventually sit down in 2020 to watch it? I'm talking about Bash at the Beach 1998 from July 12th at the Cox Arena, now the Viejas Arena at San Diego State University in San Diego, California. This show was nominated by Jeremy Russell and Eric Swinson over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. This show is the apex of, if it's not the biggest summer in WCW's history, it's one of the biggest summers, because not only are they still in the thick of the fight with the World Wrestling Federation in the ratings wars, at this point the NWO still going strong. Even though it has been oversaturated, it is still popular to the point that they made an offshoot faction of the NWO, the Wolfpack, not too long before this. Some huge stars in legitimate sport making their way to WCW, more on that later. And of course, the week before this pay-per-view was the famous Nitro from the Georgia Dome, in which Goldberg beat Hollywood Hogan to become the new world champion. It's a moment that's arguably one of the bigger singular moments of the entire Monday Night War. It's also known as the last time Nitro won and beat Raw in the weekly ratings. It was such a big moment that even like months later, when school began, friends of mine and I were still talking about, like, did you see that when Goldberg did that? Like, it was that big of a moment to see Goldberg beat Hogan the way he did. And as a young fan, it left a big lasting impression on me. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this show pans out with the power of hindsight. But let's begin with the tagline for the show. If Wikipedia is to believe, you see the poster here, the tagline says, "Like skinny dipping in the shark tank, somebody's going down." I have some questions about that statement. First of all, what does being naked gotta do with swimming with sharks? I think if you're already swimming with sharks, there's already the risk of going down at the hands, or rather the teeth of the sharks when you're swimming with the sharks. Skinny dipping is not a factor into this. Second of all, how are you going to talk about swimming naked with sharks when you have 2 of the biggest basketball stars and a big NFL star on your show and you're not promoting any of that shit? How dense can you be? I mean, looking back, that is pure WCW for you. The fact they're not even promoting this huge crossover thing happening on their show. The show's a sellout with about 10,000 folks in attendance. Gotta show love for the classic beachfront set, of course. A 1.5 buy rate, somewhere around 525,000 buys. Lots of money made for this show here. Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby Heenan are on commentary, and of course, lots and lots of media are present.
From AP, UPI, USA Today, Entertainment Tonight, E! Sports Illustrated, ESPN.
Now I can't see real good. Is that Sean Connery on stage there? Is that 007? No, it's just me and Gene Okerlund looking real sharp in that white tuxedo. I like how on the network they censored the American version of the WCW hotline, but not the Canadian one. Does that mean the Canadian one still operates? Opening contest, it's Raven's Rules as Raven takes on Saturn. Saturn is a former member of Raven's flock, so now it's basically Saturn versus the world. He wants revenge against Raven, but he's got to go through all these members of the flock first. Raven comes out with his flock members. Things begin with a big old brawl on the outside. Saturn throwing Raven into the barricade, and Raven takes all that barricade too. What a bump. In the ring, Saturn goes to the top rope, but he slips off, recovers the drop kick. Saturn on top for a couple of minutes, but he misses a top rope leg drop. Raven produces a chair according to Schiavone, but Heenan corrects him, saying it's a table, and then Mike Tenay says,
"The chair masquerading as a table here at Bash at the Beach."
A chair masquerading as a table. I could look at that line for 100 years and I will never quite understand what Tenay was trying to say here. God bless him for attempting to cover Tony's mistake, but it just made it worse. And then Bobby Heenan piles on there. He's saying, "Have you ever eaten at Tony's house? They eat on the chairs there." Saturn back on top goes for a rebound off the ropes, but Raven ducks and Saturn tumbles out. Saturn's driven hard into the barricade and Raven takes over. Flurry of kicks by Saturn and a suplex. Saturn grabs a chair. Then Tony has to confirm with Bobby it is indeed a chair. Saturn whomps Raven with it. Saturn fights off the flock, goes for a springboard off the chair into Raven, who pulls Nick Patrick in his way. And oh my God, that sell by Nick Patrick. That is the most amazing referee bump I've ever seen. That is art. I mean, kudos to Patrick for even taking that bump to begin with, but the sell he had afterward, I've loved Nick Patrick selling, like when he does take ref bumps. He has some of the most like outrageously animated arm movements and everything. This was peak Nick Patrick. A bulldog into the steps, Saturn setting up some tables here. He puts Raven on top of one table, then grabs another table, puts it on top of that. He goes up to the top rope. Konnan saves Raven, pulls him out from under the table. Saturn has what feels like 5 seconds to notice that Raven isn't where he left him, dives through the tables anyway. What the hell, Saturn? I just love that he has all day to see that Raven's not there. But at that point, you gotta commit to the spot. Like, well, Raven and Konnan jump their cue, but I gotta make this look good anyway. Whee! Konnan then brings Raven into the ring, hits a flatliner on him, face first into the chair after having just saved him. What's going on here? Apparently, Konnan and Saturn had kind of an uneasy on-again, off-again relationship where Konnan showed signs of rebelling against the flock, but he's like, psych, he turned on Saturn again to rejoin Raven. And then like after this, though, eventually the flock would disband, but this is just one note in that chapter. And if you can believe it, the flatliner on the chair, not enough to put Raven away yet. Drop toe hold into the chair, another kick out. Riggs grabs Saturn, but he gets a Death Valley driver for his troubles. Even flow by Raven. Raven pins and wins. It seems kind of silly, but I'm going to give this one 4 stars out of 5. I loved this match, possibly for all the wrong reasons. I think this was just one of the most chaotic matches I've ever seen. If you're not going to open a WCW pay-per-view with cruiserweights, which they would do in the next matchup, you might as well open up with a wild-ass brawl, and that's what this was. It had the most spectacular referee bump I've ever seen, and some chills and some spills. It was just, I was so thoroughly entertained the whole way through. It was not flawless. It was not executed to perfection. There was the slip on the top rope. There was the table spot with Saturn, but that part made the match more enjoyable to me, was seeing that insanity there. So yeah, I think, and the finish was crazy as well. It was just, yeah, it was a good old fun time for me to watch. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, probably not for the right reasons, but I can't give this a bad rating. Mean Gene with Eddie Guerrero on stage. Eddie's getting ready for his hair match with Chavo Jr. later tonight. He says Chavo's a wacko for inexplicably taking a match with Stevie Ray on the same night. He says he's going to waltz in after that match, hit the frog splash, and shave Chavo's head bald. More flock representation up next. Kidman making his pay-per-view debut against Juventud Guerrera. These two have had a series of matches in the Nitros and Thunders leading up to this, so this is a continuation of that rivalry. As the match begins, Lodi tries to get involved. He grabs Juvi, but Juventud moves before Kidman flies onto his own man, and Guerrera dives onto both. A wild sequence here where Kidman and Juvi keep countering each other into different holds. Kidman wheelbarrows Juvi over his head into a bit of a suplex there. On the outside, someone in the background fixing up the ring as the match continues. Kidman dives into the apron, gets backdropped onto the floor. Up top, Juvi is low blowed, and Kidman hits a top rope spinebuster. Damn. Juvi on the attack. Kidman dodges. Juvi slides at the ropes to the outside. They're back up top. Kidman gets crushed and followed up with a great Frankensteiner by Juvi there. Kidman with a creative spinning bulldog off the ropes. He goes for a German, but Juvi lands on his feet, hits the Juvi driver, and Kidman kicks out. He catches Guerrero with another spine buster in the corner, goes for the 7-year itch, his shooting star press, but he misses. Juvi with a 450 and just buries his knees into Kidman's stomach, and the ageless one, Juventud Guerrera, wins this match. This match also gets 4 stars from me. It's very entertaining for a very different reason than why I enjoyed Saturn vs. Raven one match ago. Just some classic WCW cruiserweight action to get the crowd even more riled up. These guys just gave you everything here, and the performance, they left it all in the ring there, and I gotta give them credit for that, so that's why I give it that rating. Konnan's in the WCW online zone, hanging out with Lee Marshall. Then we go to our next match as Stevie Ray takes on Chavo Guerrero Jr. in a bit of a bonus match. So Chavo's a relative newcomer to WCW. He's only been in the business for 2 years. He's under the mentorship of his uncle, Eddie Guerrero, who's being a bit of doing some tough love to Chavo here, to the point where Chavo snaps and is driven mad. This begins several months of Chavo is crazy kind of storyline. He would eventually hang out with Pepe, the hobby horse, a little loco here, so to speak, to the point where he even asks for this match with Stevie Ray just before his big hair versus hair match with Eddie later on. As the match begins, Eddie shows up with the scissors. He's getting ready to waltz in, like he said, on Chavo after he gets beat by Stevie. Chavo dedicates the match to Eddie, plays some games, he poses, does a little dance. He goes to shake Stevie Ray's hand, but when he does, Chavo acts as if his hand is being crushed, and he taps out, the match ending in a submission. So there you go. For the first and probably only time in wrestling history, a match ends in a submission from a handshake. Chavo Guerrero Jr. may be crazy, but he's also crazy like a fox, lulling Eddie into a false sense of security for that next matchup. So if I had to give this one a rating, because this was technically a matchup, I guess 0 stars, but it's not really going to count toward the finish. We now go to that hair versus hair match as Chavo takes on a perplexed Uncle Eddie. The match begins with a little bit of gaga, Chavo biting Eddie's backside, more wacky shenanigans, Chavo dances, Eddie hams it up. It's pretty entertaining. Eddie wants a handshake now, but Chavo too smart for that. Big back body drop to Eddie. Eddie knee sprints to hug the referee, but Chavo bites him again. Eddie finally gets serious and starts going after Chavo at a methodical pace, throws him into the barricade on the outside. We get a gory special. Chavo fights out of it, but he's taken down yet again. Mike Tenay talks about Eddie's experience in hair matches, even brings up the When Worlds Collide tag team match when he and Art Barr lost in 1994. And then after his whole spiel, Bobby Heenan goes, "How does he know all this stuff?" And Tenay goes, "I was there." And Hennig goes, "Oh." Chavo making a comeback, goes for a dive off the top rope, but Eddie moves, but Chavo sees it coming, rolls through, hits a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker. I love that. On the outside, Eddie peels back the mats and goes for a suplex or a brainbuster, but Chavo counters with a suplex of his own. Back in the ring, Eddie with a superplex. Eddie and Chavo trade stolen signature move attempts. Both men miss the frog splash, but both men hit the tornado DDT. They also take turns grabbing the scissors. The referee stops Chavo, which allows Eddie to roll up Chavo to win. A little bit awkward near the end. Afterward, Chavo grabs the clippers and threatens Eddie, but instead he shaves his own head because he's loco, and he does the whole thing. They really show the entire head shaving experience here, and that really kind of drags the whole show down. It's one of those things where, like, if you looked at it through a modern perspective, how you would produce that is that Chavo would probably start shaving his head, and they'd like go to the next like commercial for something, and then he would leave, or he'd be doing it somewhere else, doing that while the ring was getting cleaned up for the next match. But instead, we have this whole thing where Chavo just very deliberately shaves his whole head and kind of kills the vibe for a bit. But be that as it may, I give this one 3 stars out of 5. I'm only giving it that because I know how good these two are going to get as they get older and work each other more, and those are better matches. So that's why I give it kind of a conservative grade here of 3 stars out of 5. It's great, but I know it will eventually get better. In your next matchup, Disco Inferno takes on Konnan of the NWO Wolfpack, who only joined forces maybe a couple of months before this, and they are just red hot at this point. No pun intended toward the red and black of the Wolfpack. Don't turn your back. Disco makes his way out with Alex Wright, and oh boy, I need that shirt Disco's wearing. Disco and Das Wunderkind mock Konnan's opening shtick. They call San Diego Sand Dog, which at first I laughed at and thought that was just kind of stupid heelish thing. Oh no, apparently that was a thing, because when Konnan and the rest of the Wolfpack make their way out interrupt, they also refer to San Diego as Sand Dog, and the crowd liked it. It's like, oh, I guess it's a term of endearment. I learned something new today. Then Kevin Nash does his opening bit, and I can't even bear to watch it.
West Coast Riders!
That's a 39-year-old man, folks. The match begins, and Konnan's pretty dominant in this one. Disco gets maybe one moment to shine doing the dance mid-sunset flip. Alex Wright gets some cheap shots in, also does a dance. Lex Luger puts him in the torture rack, and when the referee distracted, Nash hits Disco with a jackknife, Konnan with a tequila sunrise, and K-Dog wins this one. This one gets 1 star out of 5 from me. As a match, it's nothing, but as a segment, holy crap, the NWO Wolfpack is so over here. The fine people of Sand Dog, California, love them some Wolfpack. They are rowdy and bout it. I'm no better than Kevin Nash when I say that out loud.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
When it comes to online safety, why not use the VPN the champ uses?
I'm not just the champion of YouTube. I'm the champion of the whole damn internet. And when I get on the World Wide Web to figure out my next stop on the loop, to defend this prestigious title, I need to make sure that I've got the best. Not only the best, I need to make sure that I'm safe. And I choose Surfshark VPN.
Surfshark encrypts all your data online so no one can see your passwords, private messages, or other sensitive information. Stuck at home? Never run out of content to watch. Use Surfshark to change your server's location to access shows you normally wouldn't get. Surfshark has so many benefits we can't list them all here, and it's the only VPN you can use on an unlimited number of devices. Support this YouTube station. Get Surfshark by going to the link in the description. Use the promo code REGRET to get 85% off, plus an extra 3 months for free.
Hackers just can't hack it. And with all this extra security, they will be sure to regret their decision going up against Levi Shapiro and Surfshark VPN.
Well, the next match is supposed to be a tag team affair. It was supposed to be the Giant and Curt Hennig of the NWO taking on Goldberg and Kevin Greene. But of course, last week, Goldberg winning the championship off of Hogan really threw a wrench in the works for a lot of stuff. So this tag team match split into two singles matches. Up first, the Giant taking on Kevin Greene of the Carolina Panthers. He's made some appearances in the last year or so in WCW. It's actually his 5th pro match. Greene with a lot of moving around, ducking and dodging, trying to get shots in where he can. Greene crotches Giant on the top rope early on, hits some corner punches, but Giant catches him, hits a big spine buster. Giant working over Greene, choking with the rope, slamming his head. Greene gets lifted over the ropes to the apron. Greene drops Giant on the ropes as well, begins to make a comeback, but he eats a headbutt. Greene slams Giant into the barricade and the post, but Giant still somehow shrugging it all off. Greene with a top rope clothesline, probably his best move of the match, corners Giant, goes for a 3-point stance, but Giant catches him by the throat. A big old choke slam with some serious height. The Giant wins this one. This one gets 1 star out of 5. I'm trying to rate this match as fairly as I can given the circumstances because, like I mentioned, it was supposed to be a tag team match. It was supposed to be Curt Hennig carrying 3 green-ass dudes in a tag team match, and just the thought of that on paper makes my head spin. But what we get instead is we get Kevin Greene, who again, it's his 5th professional match, going against the Giant, who by this point is only maybe 2 or 3 years in the business and not much of a ring general in his own right, and they're trying to have this match, and Greene's pretty clunky here. He wrestles like someone who's had his 5th pro match, where he's like, he's shuffling around, stomping around, trying to get in position and waiting for the next thing to happen. There's a lot in that in this matchup, but I can't blame him because he's doing the best he can, and he and Giant actually do work well together in this very simple story they're telling here. And for these two guys, as inexperienced as they are, to have a match that's like not depressing to watch, doesn't make me want to throw up watching, and we'll watch the main event for that. But to have a match like this and have it pull off as well as they possibly could, I can't fault them too much for that. So I'll give them the star. It's an A for effort, but objectively it's not a great match. But again, kudos to them for making it work. Also, a footnote here, this is Greene's last match in WCW because eventually the NFL would be more controlling over their players' extracurriculars, including wrestling. Greene will retire from the NFL 1 year later. Back in the web zone, Curt Hennig talks about his upcoming match with Goldberg, and then we have what's supposed to be a scheduled Cruiserweight title match between Chris Jericho and Dean Malenko, but it doesn't quite happen this way. Mike Tenay dubs Jericho the king of all loopholes. Very underrated nickname. It would have definitely gotten over in 2020 though. So Jericho has been ducking Dean Malenko for weeks and weeks because Dean is the #1 contender for the Cruiserweight title, and so Jericho wants no part of him. Now recently, Boris Malenko, Dean's father, did pass away in real life, and so Jericho, to get the super extra heel heat Zors, was really trying to play on that and really exploit the recent passing of Boris Malenko to get under Dean's skin. Commissioner J.J. Dillon said that if Dean and Jericho got physical before the title match, then they would be disqualified and the match would not happen. So Jericho keeps instigating, keeps poking the bear. Eventually Malenko does strike first, so he is disqualified and not booked to be on the show tonight. And I will say, there was one other thing I forgot to mention in the build to this. Jericho, because he was ducking Dean Malenko for so long, he called himself a conspiracy victim. And if you're like me and you started getting into wrestling around this time, like this might have been your introduction to Chris Jericho, like it was for me. And this got me hooked immediately because I loved Jericho's performance here as the whiny, sniveling heel who does anything he can to get out of a matchup here. And he's just such this self-inflated, self-entitled kind of person here. He's marching up and down the streets of Washington, D.C. He's holding up placards saying he's a conspiracy victim, chatting up with other protesters and other crazy people in the streets of DC. He wants to talk to Congress. He wants to talk to Bill. He is just so dead set on this. And again, this is my first exposure to Chris Jericho, is doing this whole Jerichoholics, the conspiracy victim thing. And that's how I got hooked on Jericho, like right away, was this bombastic character. Jericho comes to the ring with a top hat and cane, wants to do a soft shoe routine a la David Lee Roth, but as he's about to start, J.J. Dillon appears. He offers a replacement opponent for Jericho, says he's found a local guy who hasn't wrestled in 6 months. Jericho still wants the match to be no DQ, so he accepts, and it's Rey Mysterio, back from injury and looking real jacked, baby. Mysterio starts out hot, they fight on the outside, they almost miss the head scissors, but they recover. Jericho attacks Mysterio's heavily braced leg. He goes for a dive into the corner, but misses. Tries to leave, but Rey catches him, and they fight in the sand near the stage. Jericho climbs the lifeguard stand, and Mysterio dumps him off. Rey climbs the lifeguard stand, does does a Hurricane Rana, but hits the sand hard on his way down. Back in the ring, Jericho with a top rope power slam. He grabs a chair and whomps the knee, goes for a flying knee drop, but Ray moves. He fights back with the chair. The Hurricane Rana is blocked. Jericho goes for the Lion Tamer, but Ray fights out of it. Dean Malenko arrives. Jericho sees him, goes to the Lion Tamer again, but Ray rolls through and pins to win and become the new Cruiserweight champion. Malenko chases Jericho to the back and gives him what for. I give this one 3 stars out of 5. I recently listened to the 83 Weeks podcast about this, and Eric Bischoff explains this match was made no DQ to help kind of protect Ray, because he just come back from injury. They didn't want to re-aggravate the injury. They wanted to minimize the opportunities he had to try and do some of the crazy stuff he was known for pre-knee surgery. That being said, he still managed to bust out a couple of his trademark big flippy moves here, and even though the match is a bit short for my liking, I think the action here was just all over the place and a lot of fun. But this new Cruiserweight title reign was not meant to be, because that evil king of the loopholes, Jericho argued to Dylan that since Malenko was suspended on that night, his interference in that match nullified everything, so Jericho was handed back his championship and would go on to hold it for a few more weeks. On we go to a match for the TV title as Booker T defends against Bret the Hitman Hart. Now, Bret never officially becomes a member of the New World Order, but he is kind of a satellite member at this point, so he comes out to the NWO theme anyway here. Now, he and Booker T have been at each other's throats for weeks now, even Bret kind of getting involved with Booker's business as Booker's fighting a best-of-7 series with Chris Benoit over the TV championship. The match begins very aggressively with Booker throwing Bret for a loop, double hip toss reversal, and Bret is flung to the outside. I like that spot there. Fighting on the outside, Bret gains the advantage and pounds away at his opponent. Booker with a spine buster out of nowhere, though. We get a kick out. Bret clotheslines Booker to the outside. Bret drives Booker's back into the ring post, works over Booker's back, setting up for the sharpshooter. Booker comes back with a counter out of the corner, but he cannot capitalize. A series of kicks takes the Hitman down. Booker hits the axe kick and a flapjack, the primordial spinneroonie, before hitting a big-ass top rope dropkick to Bret. Bret powders, grabs a chair, and intercepts Booker in midair with it. Oh my God, Bret is DQ'd. Hart's not done yet. More chair shots, does the figure 4 around the ring post. He's got it on for ages before Stevie Ray, brother of Booker, slowly takes his time getting to the ring. And at this point, Stevie has come back from injury and he's become part of the NWO. He's not with Booker T, but they have a peaceful separation. They peacefully coexist, even though Harlem Heat is technically no more. But Stevie is kind of like, he's bitter at Booker at this point. He's kind of disappointed in him for changing his style up and being for the fans and having singles championships and everything. He does break up this figure 4 spot, though. He chases Bret off. Stevie looks mad at Booker, but he does ultimately help him to the back. This one gets 2.5 out of 5 for me. I thought it was a good match, but the DQ finish kind of soured it for me. Generally, those kind of endings do. But I will say, Bret as a heel, whether he's a heel or face, I think Bret was generally pretty impeccable. I think his heel work especially, just because he could make it look so real and make it look so painful. His heel stuff always looked great, and this is no exception. In your semi-main event, the new WCW champion Goldberg has his first defense against the NWO's Curt Hennig. As I mentioned, these two were supposed to be in the tag team match with the Giant and Kevin Greene, but Goldberg winning in Atlanta 1 week ago really messed things up in that regard. That being said, look at what's not messed up anymore. The World Championship. No more black spray paint on it. It's been polished and shined up real nice, looking brand new. And speaking of nice, look at that nice cut on Goldberg's head. Looks like he headbutted the door on the way out a little too hard. Hennig bumps his ass off for Goldberg in the first 10 seconds. Goldberg using a flying leg scissor takedown. Very nice from Goldberg there. Hennig goes up top, but Goldberg grabs him, takes him down with a slam. Hennig starts going after the leg. Many attacks on Goldberg's leg here. Curt with the Hennig plex, but Goldberg kicks out, hits a clothesline, a spear, jackhammer, Goldberg wins. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. It's a pretty short match, but it does play well to Goldberg's strengths. I think Curt Hennig did a really good job helping Goldberg look good while getting his own offense and his character in. But again, match quality doesn't really matter much for Goldberg at this point because he's still over as heck. And as the new champion, I mean, sky's the limit for him potentially, but how we would all be proven wrong by Starrcade this year. It's time now for the much hyped, much ballyhooed main event. So much crossover crossover appeal and mainstream attention focused on this match here. As the biggest stars of wrestling and basketball converge, you have Hollywood Hogan and Dennis Rodman of the NWO taking on Diamond Dallas Page and the mailman Karl Malone. Now, of course, you got Rodman and Malone, two of the most dynamic and most popular power forwards in the NBA at this time here. So that, again, being here in WCW is a big deal for WCW. Now, Rodman, in a couple years before this, was part of Hulk Hogan's circle. When Hogan was rocking the red and yellow, Rodman was close behind a couple of times over the years. But now that Hulk Hogan is black and white for life, brother, Rodman's joined forces and is now part of the NWO. Meanwhile, Karl Malone, fan of WCW, fan of what Rodman was doing, wanted a piece of the action. So I guess he and Diamond Dallas Page are friends in real life, or at least acquaintances. Page is kind of the middleman and it facilitates this meeting between Malone and Eric Bischoff to start a program here. So Malone is placed into this program, feuding with Dennis Rodman, and it just so happens, the timing is such, they may have hoped for this to happen, but they could not have predicted it. But here we go, because the NBA Finals that year, for the second year in a row, are the Bulls and the Jazz. So you've got Malone and Rodman duking it out for an entire series at this point. This is 1998. It's The Last Dance. It's Michael Jordan's final season. So a lot of very big important things happening here, but the timing is just amazing for WCW to have these two players involved in the finals who have a rivalry playing out here in the wrestling ring. Of course, as is now legend, and if you've seen the Last Dance documentary, you know this, that Rodman famously skipped practice after Game 3 of the finals to go hang out with Hollywood Hogan and Eric Bischoff on an episode of Nitro. And if you watch that segment, it's actually pretty cringeworthy to watch because Hogan's the only one with a mic, everyone else is talking around him, and Hogan's just kind of acknowledging them, and it's super awkward. But I guess for Rodman, it was worth it.
This is life.
I like the way you think, though.
I learned from you that bus last year, remember?
A lot. You like that skinny legs, don't you, Giant? I said skinny legs. Oh.
Yeah, that segment's definitely a good argument for scripted promos. But be that as it may, Rodman and Malone playing their part as well as they possibly could. They almost get into a fight on The Tonight Show, and they start kind of jaw-jacking a bit and extending that rivalry during the finals themselves. Again, truly, this is some genius marketing combined with a little bit of luck by WCW. Rodman apparently no-showed the Georgia Dome event, but Malone was there and said he would whip Dennis like Madonna should have. He said he's also going to be the Rodzilla Killer. He also helped cost Hogan the title against Goldberg that night. Now, I have to admit, this angle is one of the first real storylines I can remember from WCW when I first started watching. It was Conspiracy Theory Jericho, and it was Goldberg as champion. I can remember like so much of the build for this and the commentary just gushing over the basketball players, specifically Karl Malone, because no one really saw what he could do yet. We saw a little bit of Rodman because we know he wrestled a little bit in the years leading up to this, but nothing from Malone. And we could tell not much of a talker by his promos here, and as we find out, not much of a worker either, but the excitement and the appeal of Malone getting in the ring with Rodman was definitely selling this. And I can remember one Nitro, Shivani telling fans, Diamond Dallas Page has taught Karl Malone the secret of the diamond cutter. And so I was kind of excited. Ooh, that sounds very interesting. There's a secret to the move I didn't know about. And to show you how much of an idiot I was back then, not totally aware of what every move was in 98 when I first started watching, when I heard what the diamond cutter was, I thought, again, show you how much of an idiot I was, I thought the diamond cutter was you hitting somebody in the face with your hands like this, because that was the taunt. He had it up like this and went bam, like that, like bam, hit you right in the face. There's a secret to that to make it hurt more. I didn't fucking know. Michael Buffer describes this as a match that's bigger than any title, trophy, or championship belt. Wow, that's high praise. That sure takes the sting off of Hogan losing the belt 1 week ago. No wonder he's still in the main event. Lots of posturing to begin this thing. The basketball players choose to start the match off, and the crowd's definitely amped for it. Rodman ducking Malone, running for the ropes, both men rocking a whole lot of wrist tape. They finally lock up, and Rodman puts on a real shitty headlock. He runs out of the ring, tags Hogan in. Hogan and Malone face off. There's some more shtick. Bobby Heenan compares Malone to a condor. Malone with a head and arm hold into a body slam. Hogan sells big for the honored guest as DDP gets tagged in. Lots of walking around. These guys are definitely getting their 10,000 steps in for the day. There's some boring chants at this point. That's not good for a match that you just hyped up as bigger than any title, trophy, or championship belt. Rodman spits at DDP. Page gives it right back. Rodzilla with an arm drag, his best move of the night. DDP's got got Rodman in a headlock and they collide in the ring. Rodman more concerned with keeping his bandana on than anything else in this matchup here. The two of them trade headlocks. Why is DDP so bad? What's his excuse? Rodman leapfrogs DDP twice, but they bump heads and fall awkwardly, and the fans are really beginning to shit on this matchup here. They were super excited at the beginning, but now the veil's getting pulled back a little bit and everyone realizes, oh my god, these guys should not be wrestling. And Rodman in particular wrestles as if he's got a super high center of gravity and butter on the soles of his boots, because he's constantly falling over, ass over tea kettle over the stupidest things. Malone is in, Rodman is out, Rodman with a cheap shot from behind. Hogan and Rodman take turns beating the hell out of poor Malone. Some real big timber bumps by Malone here. Rodman gets knocked down by he and Hogan's own double team move. Some back suplex sandbagging. This is some hard shit to watch. Malone with a hot tag and DDP's a house of fire. Rodman and Hogan snuff it out with some double teaming. Big old clothesline in the corner sends Page in a heap. This match goes on for way too long. That hot tag should have been the turning point in this thing, but there's a beatdown and there's more beatdown. This match did not need 2 hot tags, but they gave it to him anyway. Rodman with a big front chancery. DDP tries to push him up, but Rodzilla holds on. Blatant no tag by the heels, and it's Hogan's turn. Hogan goes for the leg drop, but misses. DDP tags out. Hogan begging off the mailman, and Malone's a house of fire. This here Karl Malone. A pair of body slams, a noggin knocker, big boot by Malone. Tag to DDP, diamond cutter to Hogan. Malone with one of his own to Dennis Rodman. The referees focused on the basketball players as the disciple on the outside hits DDP with the ace crusher, puts Hogan on top of Page. We get the 3 count. Hogan and Rodman win after all that bullshit. Malone with a cutter to disciple and to the referee, and they end the match way too short, and they had to stretch out as best they possibly can, and that's how the awkwardness of the match, and then the awkwardness of the post-match stuff where they have to keep stretching for time. That is the defining moment of this segment as we fade to black. Whew boy, this one gets -3 stars out of 5 for me. This match really sucked and almost brought down the whole show for me. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but if Rodman and Malone were so limited in the ring, then why don't you limit them in the ring? We have seen the formula for what you do with a celebrity outsider in a wrestling match. You give them 2, maybe 3 spots tops to do and get the ooh and ah out of the crowd, and then they leave and let the wrestlers do the heavy lifting. I would much rather have seen Hogan and Page do like 85% of the match up here. Then you see Rodman and Malone getting in and do their shit and they leave. But what we got here was a match that was way too long, way too much shtick, and not enough timing to cover up for it. Did this match get a lot of mainstream eyeballs on it? Yes, it did. Did it captivate me as a brand new fan of wrestling? Absolutely. And I will admit, there's no denying that WCW got a huge coup in getting Malone and Rodman for this big-time pay-per-view matchup just on the heels of this hotly contested NBA Finals between their two teams. You could not have written it better than how it all kind of came together. But as a match itself, man, this match fucking sucked. My final grade for WCW Bash at the Beach 1998 is a B-. Except for the main event sucking so much ass, I think it was a really good show. It was one of many cases you'd see in this time where the lower and the mid-card guys would kind of lift up and overcome the deficiencies brought about by the guys in the main event. I think most of the matches before the main mostly delivered. I think there's a lot of great star power involved. Even if not all the matches on the undercard were barn burners, there were still a lot of great moments and a lot of great fan response to what we saw in the ring. If the main event wasn't so god-awful, I would have raised the overall grade of this show by quite a bit, but be that as it may, this is a great nostalgic trip, and it was fun to kind of reconcile the hype that I felt as a fan in 1998 to finally seeing this match play out, the whole show play out in its entirety in 2020. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review of Bash at the Beach 98. If you want to play a role in determining which shows I look at, be they good, bad, or somewhere between, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you'll have the chance to nominate classic shows for me to review. For the month of August, for classic reviews, we're looking at classic SummerSlams. And since 98 treated me so well here for this installment, I'm going to look at SummerSlam 1998, the highway to hell in Madison Square Garden. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.